In this video, we will explore some of the key discussion points from Cal Newport and Andrew Huberman's discussion on productivity. We will of course dive into Newport's big idea on productivity, which is of course deep work, as well as a few other ideas that he explored. Newport emphasizes a few less conventional approaches, aiming for quality and focus over sheer output, so let's see what he has to say. We will cover these topics: the differences between flow and deep work, the seriousness of distractions, especially social media, why there is a lot of pseudo-productivity and burnout in the modern era, using boredom as a tool for better work and creativity, the need for solitude throughout the day, and finally, structuring your day more effectively. Newport's concept of deep work, which he defines as prolonged, uninterrupted time to work on one larger task, doesn't rely on achieving flow states, which he views as more performance-oriented. He mentions how this difference in definition is important, arguing that flow is a consequence of performing a task that you are proficient at, whereas deep work is achieved due to a set of conditions that you create yourself, such as removing distractions and dedicating a long time slot to do your work. He coins a term called neurosemantic coherence, implying that you need to train your mind to associate working deeply on something, using multiple physical and mental cues to put you into this state. This leads into distractions in social media. Newport speaks about how the internet isn't inherently distracting. Rather, he suggests that it's specific apps like social media that drive what he calls moderate behavioral addiction. He argues these apps operate on a quick reward loop, encouraging people to return repeatedly. Newport argues that all social media apps are designed by highly skilled software engineers, whose specific job is to foster greater usage. This is a great point, as the attention we give social media apps determines the overall success of the app itself. Newport also discusses this idea of pseudo-productivity, highlighting that our terminology within the productivity sphere stems from agricultural roots, which focus on clear, measurable tasks, such as time completing a task, how to manage many different tasks, etc. He argues that these traditional definitions and rhetoric don't translate to knowledge work, even though we use them at our jobs or at home. In our work today, the key problem is this: simply checking off more tasks doesn't equal real progress, and could even lead to burnout. Newport highlights the productive potential of boredom, as he believes a lot of us have a tendency to reach for distraction when boredom arises. He suggests we break our Pavlovian connection to constant stimulation, allowing the brain to reflect, process, and consolidate the information from the task. One more interesting observation Newport brings up is solitude deprivation. What does he mean by this? He essentially is acknowledging that we are becoming increasingly exposed to the information that other human beings have created, which causes our brain to spend more time consolidating external information, as we are primarily social beings. He points out how our environment holds a lot of other people's information, think social media, TV, and a constant capacity for communication. He even argues that this may contribute to rising anxiety levels, making it harder to have moments of true reflection. It's a bold point. Perhaps we should consider pushing back on modern norms around always being available. So some tools for structuring your workdays. Newport describes how he structures his average workday in this podcast with Huberman. He prefers focusing on active tasks, roughly 2 or 3 at a time, keeping any other, less important task queued up on a different list. He argues that this allows him to think only on the important tasks that he decides for himself, while still being able to keep tabs on the other work that may be important later. When he is done with his active tasks, he simply adds some from his passive list to his active list. He also believes in multi-scale planning, which involves creating a quarterly plan, a weekly plan, and a daily plan. He uses a ship analogy. He wants to decide which direction he wants to go in roughly every quarter of a year. Then he wants to check in with that plan every week, which flows into and influences what he does on a daily basis, which he reviews every morning and night. These daily tasks, being anchored in weekly and quarterly goals, help prevent losing sight of big picture priorities. Finally, he suggests using a shutdown ritual, which is a clear boundary that separates work from personal time. This involves closing open loops, like checking emails or tidying your task list. It's not only practical, but signals to the mind that the work is done for the day. In summary, Newport's approach critiques a lot of modern productivity practices. He suggests a stripped-back, quality-driven approach. It's about deliberately choosing fewer tasks, focusing deeply, and structuring your work to maximize effectiveness, rather than just output. If you would like to watch the full podcast, I have linked the video where Huberman and Newport have discussed these ideas.